I'd like to welcome Sarah Moskowitz with us. Sarah is Deputy Director of Illinois CUB, the Illinois Citizens Utility Board. And CUB is tasked with helping consumers, helping advocate for consumers, helping manage rates, and helping consumers understand how to save money and how to manage their energy usage. And CUB is especially important during these times of unprecedented economic challenge and cultural transformation that we're in. So Sarah, I'd like to start by asking you to please tell us, in the midst of this very challenging pandemic and the resulting recession, how have you helped consumers, or what is Illinois CUB's response to this time in terms of consumer engagement and assistance?
Oh, well, I mean, the current times have impacted every aspect of CUB's work, internally and externally. Aside from the obvious and common logistical issues of suddenly having a staff working 100% from home, about a third of our staff were hired to do grassroots organizing and consumer education. And all of that had to pivot quickly and completely to virtual work. Luckily, we have an immensely talented and dedicated team, and things have gone extraordinarily smoothly under the circumstances. We miss being out in the field, but we, it's not just a platitude. Perhaps because of our relatively small size, we have over the years fostered a culture of hiring multi-talented people and providing room for them to pursue tasks that match their interests and skills, while of course still getting their primary responsibilities done, which I think renders us a bit more nimble under the current circumstances. And in fact, it's in a way been an opportunity for us to branch out to new methods of consumer engagement that we'd always wanted to explore, but had fallen by the wayside because we were so busy out in the field. But other aspects of our work has hardly changed at all, other than the working from home. We still operate our hotline, helping consumers who call us. And we've found that given the nature of the current crisis, this really highlighted a lot of the issues that we have been working on for decades.
Great. Well, let me ask you this. There's not only that cultural transformation that's going on, we have another big one that's going on, and that is the Black Lives Matter movement, which has brought a lot of attention to systemic racism. And as you know, in the energy space, there are a lot of issues related to that is referred to as environmental justice. There's a lot of injustice that have happened to people of color over the decades in this industry. And I'm curious to know what is happening in that space with you or with CUB. What are you doing? What is your organization doing to acknowledge and assist in this moment?
As with other entities across the world, Black Lives Matter has impacted our work both internally and externally, and I think I'd like to address both here. Internally, it has compelled us to take a hard look at what we do and how we do it at CUB. For nonprofits like ours, whose work by its very nature is closely linked to equity and advocating for disadvantaged communities, I think it would be easy and tempting for us to assume that we are the good guys, not like those other guys, so we have nothing to worry about. And we've had to check ourselves. And that is not easy, and it's by no means done. We're not finished. But all organizations have a responsibility to look at how they operate and examine whether they're perpetrating patterns within the organization that we would outwardly condemn. Meanwhile, though, when it comes to our issues and our external work, this is truly an exciting moment because more than at any other time in my adult lifetime, at least, it seems the whole world is paying attention to the systemic problems that people in my line of work have been trying so hard to highlight for our whole careers. Utility affordability, environmental justice, community-based solutions are no longer fringe or niche concepts. So we have this great opportunity right now to perhaps make some significant changes to how utilities interact with their customers. And my colleagues and I at CUB are looking forward to diving in.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I'm glad to hear that you're working on it and that you're thinking about it that way. Let me ask you this. Does CUB track call center requests for assistance, disconnections, the struggle that people are having now, either with the recession or with losing their jobs, or the Black Lives Matter movement's identification of communities of color that are already disadvantaged? What sorts of information and metrics do you have, and are you seeing increases in those requests?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we operate a hotline that anybody in the state can call if they have a utility-related question or issue that they can't get resolved on their own. We have actually been somewhat surprised that calls have not gone up that dramatically since the crisis started. That may be in part be because of the moratorium on disconnections that was instituted pretty early on, but that moratorium here in Illinois is just about over. And in fact, I think disconnections are going to be able to resume in a couple of days, so we'll see what happens then. But luckily, the state of Illinois recently approved a sweeping package of protections and assistance for utility customers that includes things like much more lenient payment arrangements and debt forgiveness for people experiencing financial hardship. So now we're working to spread the word about these benefits, along with information about the efficiency and demand response programs that can help people cut their energy usage and money and save money while staying comfortable, which is important, especially as there are more people working from home right now. And here in Illinois, it has been an extremely hot summer thus far. So it's notoriously difficult to compile information about affordability and disconnections, but the disconnection, I might leave it there. I see myself, I'm gonna go, I could get into this for like 5 minutes, so. Okay. Yeah, we don't have up-to-date information on the number of people who are in arrears and suffering from lack of service right now, although the settlement that the state of Illinois reached with consumer advocates, community groups, and the utilities to bring all of these benefits to people in need right now does include reporting provisions. And once those utilities start making those regular reports, we'll be able to learn more about the reality out there.
Sarah, let me ask you this. Is there anything that you thought 2020 would bring that now won't happen as it relates to the energy industry or your goals at CUB, given all the cultural transformations and economic issues that we just talked about?
Oh yeah. Just to narrow it down to a main example, CUB, alongside a slew of other organizations, has been trying to get some expansive and forward-thinking energy legislation passed here in Illinois for longer than I care to think about. We really thought that 2020 was going to be the year, and for a variety of reasons, it was important that it happened this year. But the regular Illinois General Assembly session was canceled, and we've been watching our chances of passage dwindling as the year passes. That said, given everything that's been happening, we do have this chance right now to revisit the reforms that we've been fighting for and make sure they include the consumer protections and opportunities that are needed.
That makes sense. I think that might be the case for every state. So let me wrap up with asking you this final question. What can you offer our viewers in terms of your recommendations for maybe the top 1 or 2 things that you think that they could do to assist consumers in these unprecedented, challenging times?
I think instead of focusing on 1 or 2 kind of policy items, I would just like to make a point about process, and that is, let's all work together to figure out the best way to do that. From utilities to consumer advocates to the commissions themselves. When it comes to assisting consumers, we sometimes find ourselves in this predicament of how to deal with programs that were created with the best of intentions, but that on the ground may not work like they should, or have unintended consequences, or don't do nearly as much or help as many people as we thought they would. Here in Illinois, we found that it is possible, although often painful, for all of the entities I just mentioned to come together and hammer out a program that so far can work. And then second, as I alluded to before, we really need to treat this moment as an opportunity to look at what significant changes can be made to address the structural problems of the status quo. In some communities, you can easily see something like 15% of customers in arrears on their utility bills at all times, even pre-pandemic. And I think we should question whether we can call that success or even viable. And like I said, with all of the attention and all the momentum around some of these justice issues, we have an opportunity now to come together and think about some real solutions that can have a lasting impact.
That makes total sense. And that would be a wonderful silver lining to this time. So Sarah, thank you so much for your time with us. I really appreciate it. I think that we've gotten a lot out of this in terms of ideas and suggestions. So thank you again.
My pleasure, anytime.